Hey bro, you got an adjustable wrench I can borrow? Bro, what happened to you? Coming on down there, Smokey McSmokerson. Welcome back, Stupid Fast Nation. How are you guys doing today? All right, guys, so I actually had this like really nice, intricate intro piece filmed for you guys, but apparently the microphone on these little microphones that I use, sometimes they blurp audio out. Not sure why that happens. I already went through all the opening of the packages. I'll show you guys a piece of that here. I'll run back through the stuff that we have for the budget 400EX real quick. You know, we paid 800 bucks for less than $200. I got everything I need to make that safe and rideable, and be able to do a comparison series with Michael Sabo. We swapped out the exhaust last night. He put his stock one on mine, I put my FMF power core on his, and then that way we could test slightly modified versus pretty stock, which it should actually be really stock. We got some stock jets for the carburetor. Mike gave me those, so we're about to put those in. And we got a couple other things here. We got the Enjoy seat cover, about $50 on Amazon. We got a Caltric battery, it's about $30 on Amazon, already charged, ready to go. I got these little Chinese grips, they're like a hard plastic, and if they don't fit the handlebars correctly, then I'm just gonna use them as like ninja chucks or something like that, but these were about $8 shipped. I got the Pro Taper handlebar pad, pretty neat little feature here. That was about $8 shipped too. Then we got this guy. This is the swing arm bushing kit. This came with the four-wheeler, and this is a freebie, but it's got the grease kit, all the bushings and everything, so we'll check the bushings out. If I don't like them, we'll go ahead and swap that out as well. And we got a chain, and it's a gold non-O-ring chain. I forget the name brand, but it's right here on the box, and this was about $23 shipped. I like the non-O-ring. It doesn't rob any horsepower, and I'm told for the price it's actually a really, really good chain. And then guys, also, we got some used tires from Facebook Marketplace just for the front. These were $30-ish, I believe. I got them like 2 weeks ago. They've been sitting here. I've been waiting to make this video for you guys. And then the back tires, Michael Sabo offered to hook me up with a really nice used set for 25 bucks. Now, I went through the brake pads that I got already, and I did that in the part that I lost the microphone, and the brake pads were actually just one set for the front. And it said in the ad that you get all three for $6.99, and I was super stoked. I was like, yeah, I found these Chinese pads. You know, you get all three sets for $6.99. Nope, not the case here, guys. So I actually kind of got robbed on that a little bit, but I'm gonna be sending those back. That brings our total to about $193 for everything, including the rear tires. And I'll show you guys a nice little screenshot of that here, going through my Amazon cart with all the parts that I got on Amazon. So anyways, guys, if you like the 400EX content, make sure you let me know in the comments below. It really helps us out. And if you guys know where to get any better deals, or if you've had any previous experience with any of this stuff, drop a comment. Let me know what's going on. We're gonna go ahead and get to work on the 400EX, and hopefully we'll be able to get that thing fired up in this video. Okay guys, so we are going to go ahead and get started working on this 400EX. Let's take a quick overview and check out everything that needs to be done on this to bring it back up to a safe, rideable condition. To start, the tires on this thing are incredibly bad shape. Whoever was riding this, Garth, got their money's worth out of it. And to say the least, you know, thank God I was able to score some good Facebook deals, because tires, although they have cheaper brands on Amazon and things like that, They're not that great. So not to say that like used tires are bad or anything like that, but I know some people have a strong preference of using brand new, and that's fine. That's fine. But for this budget build, you know, we're able to get this thing back up to subpar condition for $1,000, and getting a set of used tires was definitely ideal for us. Moving on, the chain on this thing is in incredibly bad shape. It's very rusted. Looks like it was sitting outside for a long period of time. Normally, what I could try to do to save a chain would be to soak it in oil and leave it overnight for maybe even 2 overnights, and then come back to it and see what shape it's in. But this one looks a little too far gone, to the point where the links are kinked in some areas. So we're just gonna go ahead and swap this out for 23 bucks. I mean, what more can you ask for? Taking a look at the plastics, although they're not in horrible shape, the front here has a few imperfections in it with some zippy ties here, and we're gonna add a few more and make this super, super good condition. But there's actually quite a few tabs on these that are broken, so I don't know that I'll be able to repair those. I'm gonna try some old school tricks to repair those, not in this video, in a separate video. And then also the lights, the tab for the lights is broken, and they actually sit back inside instead of out. So, you know, when you're on the trail, these things probably won't really be shining down onto the trail as much as you'd want them to. Surprisingly enough, it does have a key. Moving on, I'm told, Garth did tell me that the carburetor in this thing was pretty clogged, so we did get the carburetor kit. We did swap exhaust with Mike so we could do the stock versus modified comparison series. And I do have stock jets to go back in this that Mike gave me for it as well. And the stock kit also came with some jets. Not sure what sizes, didn't open it up and look yet. So we will take the carburetor off and make sure we get a good cleaning process on this. There was a couple other things I did notice. The front A-arm on the passenger side of the four-wheeler does have a small dent in it, which isn't make or break. That shouldn't affect the drivability of the quad at all. It's a very small dent. I can deal with that. I definitely don't need that to go ripping on the trails. The grips are in pretty bad shape. They are pro tapers, but they've been beat up pretty bad. And looking at this thing from the front, Mike noticed that my steering stem is actually bent the opposite way of his steering stem, which is pretty ironic because then you got like the yellow and the red 400EX, and then you got one bent to the left, one bent to the right. So it's pretty ironic. And then the seat cover, guys. The seat cover is in horrible shape on this thing. And although the foam on it is in good shape, that's why I got the cover, because then we can just rewrap it and be done. We will also be taking the oil out of this engine. Now, I could not fit an oil filter into the budget, so I am going to clean the oil filter. So we will take that off and see if there's a way that we can clean that out and reuse it. And then I have some 10W30 on the shelf that I'm going to go ahead and put in the bottom end of this. Should be fine. I've done it before in 4 strokes. But that's just to get us by, because we need to pass the budget. So we need to get the green light on the budget, guys. We need to stay within the $1,000. Batteries on the Charger, stock exhaust is already on. We're gonna go ahead and start by removing the plastics. Mike showed me a neat trick last night, and being this is my first 400EX, he said there's literally this lift lever back here, and then you pull these guys back, and then they should come right off of there. Hopefully I'm not breaking anything. There we go. Oh, yep, you got the gas tank piece right there. Now, I don't have access to a hose, so I'm not really going to be able to clean these plastics off at this moment. But as soon as it gets nice out, I do plan on taking this thing, stripping the plastics off of it a second time, and then going ahead and cleaning everything really in depth. All right, guys, so we're gonna take the carburetor off. We're going to start by removing this back Phillips head screwdriver on the intake tube. And I'm already aware that this airbox actually doesn't have any bolts holding it in. So I'm literally just gonna take this guy and slide it off. Oh, looks like I do have one hose holding it on here. Take that guy off. We have one little hose over here. Pinch that clamp, pull it off, slide the box out. Now this does have a K&N air filter in it, which will be good to start, but we did put the airbox lid back on because we do want this to be in as close to stock as possible. All right, guys, and then to get the front of the carburetor off, we're going to go ahead and remove this Phillips head against the intake side of the engine. Once we get that guy loose, this might be, oh, came right off. Sometimes they get a little tricky, and sometimes they come right off. Take the fuel hose off of the carburetor. I do have, make sure you have the gas turned off. Pop that guy off. And don't fling gas all over the place like me. You do have to take the throttle cable off, which might be a little difficult with the plastics on, but we're gonna go ahead and try it anyways. Flip this guy around like this. Get my Phillips screwdriver, take my side cover off. Looks like it's 2 Phillips head screwdrivers holding this plastic cover on the side of the carburetor on. Once we get this off, we should be able to remove the cable. All right, guys, once you get those 2 screws off, pop this little cover off the side. And there's your cable. Now we have to take the cable out. In order to do that, pull it off of the assembly here and then slide it out of this little groove. And just pull up, boom, like that. And there's your cable. Now, looks like there's a little nut in the inside. Oh, no, actually on the outside. And that is where you will loosen the end of your cable up to be able to slide that out of this area. Got it. A little bit of elbow grease goes a long way, guys. Just be careful, don't strip any threads. And it looks like you just twist this guy off of here. And there's probably an easier way to do this, but this is just the way that I know. So if you guys have an easier way, comment below, let me know. All right, and off she comes. Over to the workbench. All right, guys, so now that we got our carburetor off of the 400EX, we'll bring it over here to the workbench. I've got my carburetor kit, $11.99 on Amazon. I think it was $11.99. 11 bucks. Gives you a complete stock jet kit. For those of you who have a pipe and silencer or any modifications, these jets will not work for your combination. You'll have to use whatever you jet it to previously. And if you want to change the jets, you just go buy new ones. But this will work perfect for the OEM guys like me that are running just a stock trail ready 400EX. So they give you quite nice little setup here. Jets, springs, O-rings, O-ring seal, and then your float bowl plunger here, and then your air screw. All right, guys, so this one's pretty simple as well. We flip this guy upside down. We got to start by removing the choke cable assembly. I have to get a bigger Phillips screwdriver for that. Oh, my apologies, guys. This is actually the idle screw, not the choke cable. Sometimes these things can be a little bit of pain in the butt. There we go. Just move that guy to the side. I'm not going to change the idle on it until we hear what it sounds like when I fire it up. So these screws look to be a little stubborn, guys, and looks like I'm going to have to use a flathead and coerce these to come out because they look like they've been stripped a few times in their day. Not stripped, but maybe just removed a little improperly a few times, and that's expected with a 21-year-old 400EX. So I mean, that's anything that's over 20 years old, unless it's like brand new restoration or something like that. See here, this is your choke assembly. We're not going to be removing that, at least not in this video. And we are missing a screw on the bottom of the float bowl, so I will go check my carburetor box of goodies and see if I have something for this, as I do think it's necessary to have all 4 bolts. Alright guys, once you get all 4 bolts out, go ahead and take the float bowl assembly off. See, it's actually really clean inside of there. I don't see ethanol buildup or anything like that, so I'm assuming that maybe we just have a clogged main jet. But we're going to take all this out and take a look. Alright guys, let's start by removing the pilot jet. Again, just a flathead screwdriver. Takes that guy right out. Boom. Not sure how well you guys will be able to see this on camera, but you should be able to see light through the center of that, and you cannot see light through that. So that means this one's clogged. Now this is a size 40, according to Mike, And what I read online, size 38 is standard. So we do have a 38 here. But with our elevation, if we have a 40, I'll run a 40 in it, but I don't think the stock kit has a 40 in it. Actually, it's pretty funny, this Chinese jet does not even tell you. There's no indicators on this Chinese jet at all, which is kind of scary when you think about it, because it's like, well, what size is it then? So we're not even going to use this. Mike gave us jets, so we're going to go ahead and use the standard 38. Now, before I put this back together, I do like to run compressed air through all of my passages and spray carb cleaner and run compressed air through them and make sure I clean them out before reinstalling it back on the ATV. Alright guys, second up, going to take the main jet off of this guy. Give that a little loosen. She screws right out the top. This one is clear, very clear, and it is a 158, which would mean that this was jetted up for the pipe because the stock size is 148, so it's 158. So they did jet it up a little bit for the FMF silencer that was on it that we swapped out. So we'll go ahead and set this one to the side. So I've got a 150 here. The stock's 148. I'm going to bump it up just a hair. I always like to be on the rich side with my machines. I think that is extremely necessary, especially when you're at my elevation, which I think I'm about 1,500 feet above sea level. So looking down through the passageway there, it does look pretty clear, but I'm going to go ahead and pop this top jet out anyway. Yeah, and that does look really, really clear. I'm going to stick this guy back in there. Not going to touch it. Put the 150 in it. And the 38 pilot, and then we're going to call it a day on this car. We are going to change the air screw out though, so I'm going to stick that 150 on there. Just snug it, don't over torque them, guys. No need to over torque the bolts. Just try not to fling your screwdriver around like me. Next up, we're going to remove the float bowl assembly and the plunger for the float bowl. And then what you have to do is you have to knock this pin out, and then this whole assembly comes out. And just be careful because there's usually a little tab on most float bowls that you can bend and change the height of the float bowl. And you don't want to do that because that will actually make your carburetor overflow or not get enough flow. Most of these are pretty simple. Most carburetor pins will slide right out. If I can get my slippery fingers on it. There we go. Slide that out, pick this guy up, boom, there's your plunger. This plunger feels like it's in pretty good shape. There's a little spring in the top of this pin here, and that will touch the bottom of your float ball. Wow, this goes to show you guys, I don't know if this is actually OEM or not, but this is the Chinese one they give you. And just to show, if you guys can see that, there is a difference in how these line up. And you can tell the OEM one that was in there actually is a pinch longer than the OEM one, which is crazy, but I don't know if I should change this out or leave it go. I think we're going to change it out for the shorter one. That would just mean the float has to come up just a hair higher to shut the fuel flow off into the carburetor, which, being that small amount, I'm not going to cry about it, but I definitely feel like is something that to be aware of in Chinese carburetor kits. So when you buy Chinese cheap, make sure you're looking at this kind of stuff, guys. Very, very important. So you want your engagement to be where the float sits pretty level, and then that's where you want your plunger to be touching the top, and then you have a little bit on your spring left there, but that will stop the float bowl from overflowing essentially. At this point you could put your float bowl mechanism back on, but I'm going to go ahead and take the air screw out. Now upon removing the air screw, what you want to make sure you do is count your turns in first so that you know where it was originally. And I usually go in half turn increments. 2 half turns equals a whole turn. 2.5, 3. So I got 3 turns out of this. So this was 3 turns out, which is a little bit more than I expected, but that usually tells you that you need to be jetted up a little bit more, that you're compensating. O-ring definitely looks a little tarnished and out of it, but let's check the length on this other needle. We'll see if there's any differences between the Chinese and OEM again. Yep, this one looks pretty similar. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the O-ring on this guy, and we are gonna change that out. Now there's already a spring and a washer down inside of here, so I'm not gonna do anything with that except for gently put this guy back in there. And I'm probably gonna turn it down to 2.5 turns. Because I think with the stock jets and the stock silencer, it probably doesn't need to be up at 3. All right, that's about as tight as it's gonna get. Now we're gonna come out a half. Now we can put the float bowl assembly back on. So this here, guys, this is called an accelerator pump. And what happens is when you stab the throttle very hard, this injects a little bit of fuel into the inside of the carburetor for that big bore, pulls in a little bit of extra fuel, helps it accelerate a little bit faster without a bog. So if you have a little bit of a bog, definitely take this apart. There's a diaphragm in here, and this plunger, it's like a vacuum pump almost when you stab the throttle. Puts the fuel into the center of the carb for the engine. So we're gonna pop this O-ring out and change that guy out. Be very careful putting the float bowl back onto the carburetor. The one thing you want to make sure is that it's a loose fit. You definitely don't want the float bowl rubbing the sides of the carburetor. So I always test that before tightening any of my bolts down. And all you do is reinstall the screws after you clean everything out, and you should be good to go, guys. Alright guys, so installing this carburetor is exactly the reverse procedure of removing it. We start by getting the throttle cable back into position, which is actually a pretty easy task for the most part here. Then we get our plastic cover installed again. Try not to drop everything like. Alright guys, and then once you get that back on there, you get that little cover on there, slide this carb back into position, get the fuel hose reconnected, get our overflow tube tucked back in down below. Poop pop pew. That's be that. And we tighten up the Phillips screwdriver head on the side of the intake. Again, same procedure here. We're just putting the air box back into place. We're going to reconnect the one tube on the bottom here that we took out in the beginning. It's very hard to see. It's hard to get a good angle on this one for you guys. This guy back on there. And we will tighten this guy back down here. Alright guys, so in this part, next up, we're going to be doing the battery installation. Now this one doesn't have a ground strap or a way to hold the battery in, but I've come equipped with zippy ties. So we are going to be using temporarily, permanently, right? We're going to be using some zippy ties to hold this bad boy in place. And for future reference, we're going to be doing the actual OEM battery holder. But for this, we're going to be going to using zippy ties. This is temper permanently going to get us by until after the budget series, because we literally are squeezed so tight against the budget that I cannot even afford in my budget to buy the strap for this. So a bungee cable would work pretty good, or a bunch of zippy ties, which is what I'm going to use. Now guys, I'm not a fan of using zippy ties like this, but it'll work in a pinch. And to be honest with you, it's just a little bit of a character adder, so this is so ghetto. That'll work. Now we can do the ground strap side. That's the battery side. Make this just a little bit longer. That's that guy. Then we're gonna take this file. We're gonna go ahead and file this down. Now I know this is probably not the stock location, guys, okay? But I just need something temporarily to get me by. And then we will go back and address all these things later. All right, guys, we get that tightened up. That takes care of the battery. This thing should have power now. All right, guys, so after a couple minutes of troubleshooting, what I found here is that the fuse holder, actually the one positive terminal doesn't come up to even touch the fuse. So that means the rest of the ATV is not getting power. It took me a few minutes to find it, but I finally figured it out. As you can see here, the metal terminal in the back side of this plug is literally falling out. So we're gonna go ahead and put that back in, put the fuse in, and then we should have power. All right, guys, so now that we got the rest of the quad put back together, we're gonna leave the back plastics off for now, and we're gonna go ahead and try to give this thing a first fire. Put the choke on real quick. See if she'll breathe some life. Yeehaw, doggy! Woo! Well, I guess we'll have to turn the idle up, but that'll work for now. All right, guys. So that concludes today's telecast video brought to you by Stupid Fast Productions. We are going to be saving the rest of the things on this 400. We'll finish those up in the next video, and we will take this thing out for a first rip. I do want to get the tires put on before we get it out for a rip. But as always, if you guys enjoyed the content, make sure you give it a like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Peace!